Hello, everybody, and welcome to our new show here on the PGS Treks. I am your host, Mmmm, and of course, I have my co-host with me as well, Julian M, who is a longtime member of the Post-Geek Singularity here and a huge Star Trek fan as well. Julian, how are you today?
I'm doing really good, RM. I'm really happy to be here with you and to start a new show and get us going into the new year. I'm excited.
It is exciting, isn't it? And Julian, you and I have met in person. I am on the East Coast, you are on the West Coast, but we have met at a con or two. So we do know each other. We've actually met each other in person. I've actually met your whole family, very nice family, Julian. And we have talked about Star Trek in person and at different times as well. So, over the past year, guys, Julie and I have been talking about Star Trek, just like all of you here on the Burnett Network who love Star Trek as much as we do. And so we're so delighted to be starting the show here on the Burnett Network, which I feel like, we have a strong base of Star Trek fans, certainly something that we need to address and talk about different things that are on our minds. So, Julian, we're doing the best of 2022 for Star Trek. And there certainly has been a lot that's been going on this year.
Yes, Trek has really upped its ante with a number of shows, and it's a good time to be a Trek fan. There's all sorts of stuff out there for people to really enjoy, whether it's animation or live action. So that's good.
Yes, there are options, more options, I think, in this year, maybe than we've ever had before. And of course, there have been changes. And, fortunately, you and I have gone to a con or two where we've seen that there is a maybe even more fans of different shows throughout and across the board. But for the sake of time, we are only going to discuss a few of the shows that have come out for Trek this year. And of course, that's going to include uh, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and of course, Strange New Worlds, which had its premiere season. But I did want to say, in regards to Discovery, it really has continued to run all this time. And I think a lot of people, might have thought that they were only going to do a few seasons. Gee, is it season 5 or 6 now, Julian? They've had a pretty long run for a show that a lot of people thought was only going to go to season 3.
Yeah, it's hung in there. I made it through season 3, and it just hasn't been high on my list to continue watching. Um, Maybe sometime I'll go back and watch it, but there were there were things that were just didn't work for me, so it was hard to continue watching. But I am happy that we have other things. Strange New Worlds had picked up kind of a lot of things for me. I really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that I saw in that first season. Um, but hey, Discovery. I'm excited that we have more people coming to become Trek fans, and if that show is what's working for them, then I am happy about that. And I think there's some really good characters in that show too. It's just for me, the stories were kind of inconsistent in what I expect from Trek.
Yeah, and I do actually share a lot of your opinions in that. Certainly, the concept of what it was going to be did sound very interesting, and it has brought in new viewers. We do know that, Julian, because while we were at the cons, we've gone to panels and seen a lot of younger generation people who never watched the original Trek. They've never watched the original series, and they've been introduced to Star Trek because of Discovery or because of Lower Decks or whatever series, and now it's making them actually show some interest in the other series, which is something that I am actually very happy to see happen, where they are now going to go ahead and say, hey, let me check out something else. They didn't even know Star Trek existed. That's actually what's happening, is that it's very different. I know when I was growing up, Star Trek was always on the television somewhere 24 hours a day. So with this different type of streaming and media, the way that people watch programming is very different. So I think it is a good positive thing that that is happening, and I think that people will continue to show interest in Star Trek because of this. Um, I was at a con recently in New York, the New York City Comic Con, where they had a panel about Star Trek. And Julian, I know you've probably seen this panel. It's been on YouTube already with the Next Generation. And of course, at that same panel, they did have a segment for Star Trek Discovery. And while I think that this past season on the air for Discovery was filled with a lot of different things that actually garnered a lot of interest and questions. I'm not quite sure how the next season will be, but one of the things that stood out was that they had a political candidate on Discovery, a woman by the name of Stacey Abrams. And ironically, I don't think that the campaign had already taken place or not. I think it was coming up, and she appeared as a character on the show. And it was met with a lot of comments. But one of the things that stood out to me about it was that, seeing somebody who's actually going to run for office in Star Trek, not a bad thing, but I was hoping we would have seen more of the other candidates as well. Julian, what do you think about that? Did you hear about Stacey Abrams being on Discovery, and what kind of impact do you think it had on the series overall?
I don't know if it really had that much of an impact, other than to draw fire from people on the other side of the political spectrum, and which is too bad. If Stacey Abrams is a Trek fan already, then there's a history of Trek having people come in and do cameo shots on a show, from Seth MacFarlane to Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine. It's because they're Trek fans and they want to be. What was it? John Teshi back in Next Generation was on there. He was a show host, a talk entertainment show host. He was a big Trek fan and he wanted to be on, and he was a Klingon. It's a history of people saying, "Hey, I want to be on the show," and they find little places for him to be. If it was something like that, I think that's great, and I'm happy that they were able to, work in a little place for her. But I think that Discovery's very strong social political views were playing with that person being, with Stacey Abrams being in the show. And so it's just they're really in your face about how they feel about how we should be living our lives, I think. And I think sometimes that's the problem a lot of older fans have with the show. In the past, Star Trek, with an exception of a few shows, a few episodes, Star Trek has really tried to present stories that give you both sides of the idea, the opinion, and let the viewer take it and think about it and go, how do I identify with whatever topic is being put up? How do I feel about it? How does it show, does this show make me feel different about where I'm at with my political views, with my, just how I'm living my life? And so it's actually not surprising that there in the past have been a high number of there's been conservative and liberal fans of the show. I'm pretty sure there still are, but the way that stories were written, it made it easier for both sides to enjoy a show and not feel antagonism towards each other.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the main things that I've always noticed about Star Trek is that they always presented multiple views, opposing, unopposing, neutral, those that don't want to have anything to do with it. You saw everything like that. And so maybe that's their attempt of trying to go in that direction. Who knows? Certainly, it was a colorful season for that series. And they have a lot of optimism. When I was at the con in October in New York, there was a lot of excitement surrounding Discovery and the cast. They've been enjoying being on the series, and so there is that. So, I think we can all have no fear. There will be certainly more Star Trek series to come. This is not certainly one of those situations where we feel that there isn't. Some will grab people in one way and grab others in another way. Hopefully. So only God knows what's going to happen with that the next season. But as I said before, they've had a pretty long run for a television series that has a lot of expectations. And to be honest with you, Julian, I don't think there are any other television series that have as great expectations as Star Trek's, because of the fans, because of what we're expecting. The level of quality that we've received in the past has been, high in my opinion. But so I do want to go into Strange New Worlds, because this was Strange New Worlds first, let's say, season one of Strange New Worlds. And I don't know how you feel about it. I absolutely didn't know what to expect from it, because we have been kind of seeing new depictions of Star Trek in a way, in ways we haven't seen it before. But ironically, Strange New Worlds seemed to be the one that looked the most familiar to me, just by what they were presenting with us as a series. Um, Julian, did you watch Strange New Worlds? And what was your opinion of the series this first year, of something that has been talked about incessantly, it seems like, for years, Julian? What did you think of it when you first started watching it? And just your general thoughts about the series.
I enjoyed watching this series. I think production wise, it was consistent all the way through the season, and there was lots. I mean, I could kind of like put a lot of other things on autopilot and just sit and enjoy watching this show for what they were trying to do with it. I still have questions about some of the decisions that they've made, but I liked it. I'm interested in seeing what they're going to do with it next season. I kind of had to put myself in the frame of mind that it's an alternate. For me, it's an alternate universe. I know that the production wants to say that all their stuff is in the Prime universe, and they've, with just cosmetic, changes to how things look. But I think that there's things going on that the way that they're handling characters and stuff like that just don't sit it well for me in what was established in the original series, and so I'm just enjoying it for what it is by itself, and that's enough. That's good enough. It's Star Trek, and it has some a lot of familiar themes. I'm not sure sometimes that they're actually thinking a little more carefully about what it actually means for how it fits in with the rest of the universe as it goes forward. I think, I had they established some really interesting new characters while having these older characters, that are being inhabited with different different actors. And Hemmer, the engineer who came on, was played by Bruce Horak. I found him really interesting, and I was like, well, that's kind of cool. I want to get to know more about this guy. And then they killed him off. I was like, what are you doing? And there were, they had 10 episodes. There was at least 4 that kind of like stood out for me in the whole season. The Children of the Comet, which I think was the second episode, was really cool. And Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach was good science fiction to an extent. The fact that they were taking it from Those Who Walk Away from Umlas from Ursula K. Le Guin and didn't even really acknowledge the original creator of that story idea. That's bothersome to me on another level of how they're treating the property. And the Serene Squall with the pirates taking the Enterprise, I liked that episode, and I liked that character who was the leader of the pirates. I really liked them, and I can't remember that actor's. It was Jesse. I can't remember their name, but it was really interesting how their story was being used to play on Spock's, character and the things that he's going through and trying to rectify his human and Vulcan have. So that was kind of cool, and the fact that they used it to eventually, that they're probably going to bring his half brother Cybok in next season is interesting. So that's something to look forward to, I guess. I even enjoyed Spock Amok. That was fun, and like I said, I was able to kind of like put everything established aside and just enjoy the shows for what they were presenting, for the most part.
Well, this certainly was a very interesting casting choices they made for the show. And like you, I did enjoy a lot of these characters. I felt like the casting was spot on. Certainly the performances are great. Of course, there were going to be questions about Spock and his, let's say, mating practices, things that we know to be, factual versus what they presented. And of course, Anson Mount as this character got a lot of attention, so much so that a friend of mine who is also a Trekkie, his name is Shadow, which many of you guys probably know, called this series in the beginning, kind of like a version of Love Boat, because there was a lot of kind of, it felt very romantic to me. And it was almost as if they were trying to seduce you into watching it. That's what I say. And I think that any series that can do that, where you're intrigued by everybody, where everybody is, honestly engaging, that's what we want to see in a show. You're very lucky to get everybody who can meld like this, who can perform like this as an ensemble cast. There wasn't anybody really overshadowing anybody. And, we did see, behavior between the characters that seemed natural for the situations we were presented with. And it is true of some of the lore necessarily was not correct in some cases, and maybe they want to build up on certain relationships. And like, for example, the relationship between Spock here and the I guess she's the woman who works in the medical area. I can't
Nurse
remember.
Chapel,
Yes, and
who's actually a doctor, and she even talks about her expertise. Dr. Mabinga does present her as being someone who is quite expertise. I think even in the original, you find out in the original series, she is actually a doctor. She was on board the Enterprise ostensibly to go and help find her fiance, Roger Corby, in the episode, What Are Little Girls Made Of? And after that episode, she kind of agrees to just stay on board the Enterprise, and so they slot her in as the nurse. But that's what happens with Christine Chapel in the original series. Not a lot other than that, but I appreciate that they've given her character a lot more to do in these earlier days. I liked the actress, and I liked her characterization. Like I said, we're taking it in certain, directions. I like Dr. Mapinga being on board the ship, but they don't answer the question of where the chief medical officer who was established before, Dr. Boyce, where did he go? What what happened to him? Did he get killed on a away mission before they finished their first 5-year mission? What happened? So sometimes these would be things that they could kind of like perhaps give us as background that helps tie it in with the original series a little bit more. The helmsman Jose Tyler, where did he disappear to? We now have Erica Ortegas, who's being played by Melissa Navia, who's playing the helmsperson now, and she's great. She's got certainly a certain attitude that she's playing the wisecracky helmsman, but
Yes.
they're not explaining why
Always
a
on
red
my
shirt
watch, I think
is at the helm.
she's like, it had to happen on my watch, right?
Yeah. But a lot of us who know the original series are wondering why there's a red shirt who's the primary helmsman, and so it's like perhaps there is some explanation they've come up with, but they haven't chosen to tell us in the story, and so it makes it kind of weird. And maybe it's just that they wanted a different color on the bridge because there was just blue and gold. And I don't know. And because communication desk they've made the bridge so big that it's difficult to get shots where you get a difference, a variance of character in there. So
yeah, I can see it. It's huge.
yeah, I know that they were probably like, oh, it would be bigger and it should be bigger. And it makes it easier perhaps for camera shots and things like that. But making everything bigger means the ship is bigger, which means it takes a lot more energy consumption to move that mass. And so, I got to say, though, I like the costumes, the uniforms redesign. Not so. I love the green wrap that Pike wears. That redesign of the green wrap that Kirk used to wear all the time. It was like choice. I like if I had the body for it, I would get that. I would get that for cosplay. And the redesign that they did of the Monster Maroon jackets from when for the last episode, their I can't remember what it was, but it was their replay on the Balance of Terror. That was a nice redesign of the Monster Maroon, I thought, that fit within that world that they've established. So, there's good things. There's good things to enjoy about it, but I think the stories kind of were not always the best. So
Well, this is you make a lot of good points, Julian, and this is obviously things that we've observed, that they went through a lot of care to make this show have a specific look. It does feel a little retro to me. And they kind of presented the captain as a sex symbol, if you will, along with Spock, which is, I think, very interesting to do to both characters, because it's almost as if they are expressing their desires a little bit more in this series, in a way that we haven't seen before. On more than one occasion, we see the captain throw on an apron and start to cook for everybody. And, it's kind of like a different side of the captain, which we know this man is okay. So he's maybe the most charming man in space, right? This is how they're presenting this captain. It's clear he's not somebody who doesn't like to spend time with, in intimate situations. I'm keeping this as sex free as possible. But to be honest with you, we've seen, different, there was going to be an episode where he was going to be in bed with someone. And of course, it's the episode where he sees his ex-girlfriend. I think I passed it already, but I think it's here. I actually had it on there, and I said I knew they were going to play this up, because They couldn't have this character just be and just a captain. We have to see him, in this way. And we also saw Spock in somewhat of a more intimate manner than we've normally seen him. Why, Julian? Why did they focus on this? Let's say sexuality we always knew was there. And I have no problem with this at all. Like, I'm fine with this. I'm very happy that they did this. But is it appropriate for Star Trek? And why do you think they might have decided to do this now? Were they, doing this because they felt it would pull in more viewers? What do you think was the importance in this series? Because it was so prominent.
I think that the creators of the show, in pretty much all of the modern Trek that's happening now, have decided that we're on a streaming channel. People are paying to see this content. It's not on free, stations, aired stations. It's not NBC. It's not CBS. I mean, in a way, it is CBS now, but it's streaming because it's Paramount. And I think that the belief is a show that was originally being played back in the 60s, where they had to be careful of the censors. I mean, there was lots of playing around going on in the original 3 seasons of Trek. We just didn't see it. I mean, the most we got was an interlude happening right before they're heading to the bedroom, or right after they're done in the bedroom. Oh, here's Kirk putting his boots back on. After that interlude in Wink of an Eye, we know what happened. So I think that they're like, this is no different. It's just that we can kind of move the conversation, the dialogue, more into the scene and combine the stuff perhaps to streamline the story maybe, and not be afraid of showing stuff that we don't have to worry about a censor at this point, because we're not showing outright, sex happening so much. I don't think it in their first season of Strange New Worlds, I don't think that they had any more, sex going on than they did in the original series. I think that it was just a little bit more in your face, because perhaps they think it will drive in a few, other, like you've said, they've made it abundantly clear that they're trying to present Pike and Spock as kind of, hunks that are going to draw women. It's in a way, it's kind of meta if you think about the original series and how Shatner and Nimoy, Shatner was the guy who was usually going to end up getting the gal most of the time, but letters started pouring in for Nimoy, and ostensibly coming mostly from women who were fans of the original series, and they really, really liked Spock. He became he was getting more attention than Shatner was, and so it is kind of interesting in a meta way that I think they're playing with that a little bit, perhaps, in this storytelling world that they're giving us. I think bringing in T'Pring like they have, while it's made for some interesting stories, I don't know how it meshes very well with the way that his relationship with her was presented to us in the original series. So again, I have to kind of put one to the side and say this is their story, and this is how they're telling it, and see if I enjoyed it or not. So I don't think it's going to get too blatant, but certainly, there's a lot of sex going on.
You are right, Julian. And it is something to think about. And I also wanted to get your interpretation on something that we saw time and time again in the series, was that whenever poor, Captain looks in the mirror, or it's some kind of reflective surface, he sees sort of his fate coming for him and ever kind of looming over his shoulder. Was this overkill? Could they have done this differently? What did you think about that? Because you cannot escape it in this series of seeing that they didn't just show you once, in other words. What are your thoughts on how they are kind of presenting this looming fate of his, and will he be able to avoid it?
That, it's certainly that his fate has been a running narrative through the whole series of that first season, and not only that, but it was uppermost when once he discovered it when he was on Discovery in that second season, and it brings up several good questions of how they're handling it, why it's going to be what it is, and I feel like because they're so set on saying this is the original Prime universe, that this is how it has to happen, and then they present us like in Discovery, the Arya. I can't remember what the character. I think that was the character's name. She was kind of like a cyborg type of character, where she was mostly a android, but her body was mostly, I'm not exactly sure, but it was because of an accident, and she'd been placed into this body. And if they have that kind of technology already established, I have to wonder, what is it about the delta radiation that he's going to be subjected to when he has the incident? Why now is he still going to go into the beep chair, as some others have referred to it, the beep chair, and so it makes it kind of, when you think about it through, you go, well, the technology now doesn't really make sense for why he has to be in that chair when they've come up with these other reasons why other people who suffered tragic things, they're not in a beep chair. They're in a fully autonomous cyborg body walking around.
Or they're in the, what is it, the teleport system, even that.
Well, yes, Minka's daughter being in the continuous loop of the transporter. So I think the Kelvin universe dealt with Pike and his accident in a totally different way. As a matter of fact, they ended up with him in a wheelchair at the end of that first movie, 2009 Star Trek, but it was because of the damage he'd received, from the Romulans during that that incident, and then they killed him off into darkness in the second movie. So, as far as we know, they never went to Talos 4. And that would have been a good way to continue the movies, is they could have had the actual Enterprise crew deal with the Talosians, but they didn't. But the fact that the Kelvin universe decided to not deal with what happens to Pike during that accident is kind of a clue. Perhaps they could figure out how to do something that would end up avoiding that fate of his. Perhaps some sort of a time travel thing or something like that. I don't know. But the fact that they're making it so important to him, one thought is that if you know what your future is, if that's your set future, then you really don't have to worry about anything else that happens until that point. Because it's going to happen, right? So just live your life to the fullest until it happens. And sometimes it feels like that's what he's decided to do, and other times not. So, I think certainly what happens in that last episode of the season with him seeing the difference that, what could have happened, what, if he was in charge of the Enterprise at that point in time, has him thinking of, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I should just go off and do what I'm going to do instead of staying. Don't try and change my future and just let it happen. And maybe he's going to be much more at peace with it in that second season, and we're not going to see it.
Yeah, that's another good point, and certainly we noticed that at least in this picture here with Spock, that they have a lot of chemistry. The two of them, the actors, have incredible chemistry together. I mean, it's like they're tight, like they're really tight, Julian. And then, of course, my next thought was with the Uhura character. Of course, she's one of the most important characters on the show. I don't have a picture of her conveniently in front of us, but oh wait, well, there she is.
Yeah.
There. What did you think about the way they brought Uhura back in this series?
For what they did, I think if she was going to stay on board, I would have had some issues. If she's not going to stay, if she's not going to be on the show second season, that makes a little bit more sense to me. How they've set up in this universe that cadets go on these training voyages, to see if, kind of like, what are you interested in? What line of study? What career path do you want to take? Are you fit for space service? That type of a thing. And I think that's cool. I think that's what they tried to set up as what was going on with Tilly in Discovery. I think they were more successful with what they did with explaining that with the way they handled Uhura. I don't know if they necessarily needed to create some sort of tragic backstory for her. It's like if they want to, every time they want to tell some sort of thing, everybody's got some sort of pain and tragic backstory that, is the genesis of why they are so good at what they are. And I think if they really, these are tropes of storytelling, and they're TV tropes, and it gets kind of boring to, it's like, oh, everybody's got to have a trauma. And I don't think everybody has to have a trauma. I think everybody should be out there doing their job. They're out in space. They're in Starfleet. They're supposed to be pros. They're supposed to be, this is what I trained for, and this is what I'm doing. This is the best of the best that are supposed to be out there. And they're supposed to, sure, everybody's going to have a bad day. That's why they ended up having characters like Deanna Troi as, a ship's counselor to help people get through, things that are going to happen. There's going to be incidents that cause PTSD. Those things are going to happen, but they're trying to be proactive by being able to have characters that can deal with those things and help others deal with those things. And so for them to rely on these tropes of, I've got this tragic thing that happened in my past, which we'll go with a lot when we talk about Picard, it's just an old trope that I think gets in the way of good storytelling oftentimes. But I liked her, and I did appreciate her interactions, trying to learn new things and stuff like that. Her uncomfortable, being the young officer, trying to fit in with other characters that are very comfortable with each other, and that was shown very, very effectively, I thought. I did like, you mentioned Pike cooking for everybody and Captain's Mess and all that kind of stuff. I know Rob has problems with this, but you can go back to like Master and Commander and see that, young officers are often invited to that mess because that is part of the captain's job to, help guide young officers into becoming successful older officers. And that's natural. I had no problem with him, having captain's mess and having all manner of his officers there to, have food with. I have problems with the size of his freaking quarters. But that just, that's what they decided to do. They decided to make it huge. I think it'd be a lot more effective if they had kept that smaller aspect of the ship. I mean, this ship is almost twice as big as the original Enterprise, if you think about it, the way that they've shown it to be, and so I don't buy that. But
Well,
it is what it is.
apparently fine dining is part of being an officer on the ship.
Well, of course.
And romance and obviously exploration. It's called Strange New Worlds, and I kind of made a joke about saying, well, it didn't really feel strange or new, so could they call it Strange New Worlds? Do they have a right to call it that? But there definitely is this undertone of romance to this series, and if this had to be the series that was romanticized, so be it. It's playing on a lot of what we love about a lot of Star Trek series, and putting some of those elements into it. It certainly has a little bit more finesse, I think, than a lot of things we've been seeing these days. And while it is true that they're trying to kind of rebuild things and make it interesting, this was going to be a difficult series to write for anyway, I think, Julian, because you're talking about characters we know extremely well, not new ones. So this is something that was going to be challenging from the beginning. But I think they did a good job overall, and I enjoyed the series as well. I don't know what the next season will bring, but I certainly hope that, it continues to grow. I think, what these writers and the entire team needs to do is to grow a little bit more and now, kind of step away from, like what you said, from these tragic backgrounds and, let's make some progress. Let's see where they can make the universe a little bit better. Let's see some of that going forward for a series and for a crew that seems to be capable of doing anything. I think they're incredibly talented, and we haven't even begun to see what they can do. So let's hope that their fates turn out a lot more positive than what I've seen for some of the other from some of the other series. But I know it's not for everybody, but I would recommend Strange New Worlds for anybody who wants to see or a Star Trek series, a new Star Trek series going forward, because like you, I enjoyed it, and I think it was worth watching. For this type of show, as I said, it's hard to recreate what we're expecting from Star Trek. So this is, of course, Julian. You and I are going to have to talk about Picard season 2 and Picard, and this has been something that so many people have been talking about, and obviously we couldn't get away from it because it certainly was a series that also had very high expectations. Even I, in my mind, when I first heard about it, I said, this is going to be the best series that's ever been made. I was expecting, perhaps maybe unrealistic expectations, but at the very least, something different than what I felt we got in season 2. For me, the most frustrating part of season 2 was when Picard was sitting down with his love interest, and everything seemed to kind of halt. Nothing had kind of happened, and it was a very intimate, nice moment. And it's like, he deserves to have a romance in his life too. But I questioned a lot of things in it. However, I did watch it, and it was all right. What did you make, Julian, of Picard season 2? And of course, we will be talking, guys, about what's coming up for season 3. But before we get there, I did want to talk about Picard season 2. What were your thoughts?
I was pretty disappointed with how this show, for the majority of Picard season 2, I appreciated that you have all the characters that they established in the first season, and you start the second season off with 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 Picard and Talon, and the actress Orla Brady and Sir Patrick Stewart, and we are given this. They're starting to, kind of come together, that they like each other, and I felt like it was kind of thrown into my face. There, she was apparently, with that other Romulan in the first season. We get
Yes.
that, and we get that she's very affectionate towards Picard, but there is no, there was nothing like what you got in Next Generation, where you obviously saw that there was attractions between Picard and Crusher that grows closer over time until eventually they do get married. And part of, I guess they were trying to use that, this whole um, plot line that Picard cannot establish a meaningful relationship because of some tragedy that happened to his mom in his past, which um, throws out an awful lot of history that was already established about Picard's youth. Um, Nowhere is it mentioned his brother Rene is nowhere to be seen in those backflashes of his in the second season. He and his brother never mention this thing about his mother in the Next Generation season, episode Family, where he is dealing with what the Borg did to him when they changed him into Locutus. So they kind of really decided to forget everything that had happened to Picard in Next Generation and in their movies, so that they could tell this story using some tragedy that Patrick Stewart, the actor, thought, oh, why don't we, discuss, this type of a thing for my character. So there we have, the reason why he has trouble getting involved with Orla Brady's character initially. When in reality, the show ends up being Q is dying and wants to be able to tell Picard or help Picard somehow with this tragedy in his life to help him grow and become, at ease with himself, because he's dying and he wants to let Picard know that he was very, very important to him as his friend, which I really actually liked. It was one of the things I really liked about that show. I shed a tear watching that scene near the end between John Delancey and Patrick Stewart. I mean, it was great. But I thought, if this was what we were getting to, there could have been a lot better way to get to it than all those preceding episodes that we saw. I thought it was just kind of a mess. And it was filled with tropes and time travel and don't do anything that will affect the time, and then they do everything that will affect time and not even worry about it. They even left Rios in the past. It's like, how much more can you screw up time? So I think they weren't really thinking about the ramifications of everything that they were trying to tell. And it was kind of a mess of a story. But I really like you.
Well, from what I've heard, they've said, or the writers have said that the producers said that they had to stay away from certain themes. They didn't want it to be a repeat. They wanted to go to someplace new, and it was all of those things. It was new. It was different. But in 2, we saw a lot of familiar faces, which I guess was just a matter of time. And of course, the idea of seeing these familiar faces, I think, at least on my end, got me excited, because I thought, if we keep seeing more and more familiar faces, maybe we're going into a realm and kind of getting that feeling back from the Next Generation. So, and of course, I guess more or less, after what was said at San Diego Comic-Con, after what was said at New York Comic-Con, that's pretty much what they're promising and seem to be delivering, Julian. I mean, they focused on these main characters again, so we know we're seeing them. There's been a lot of excitement about Picard season 3. You and I have talked about Picard season 3. And of course, everybody who is a fan knows and feels that there should be some kind of, if you want to call it closure or conclusion, or at least a progress report after what's been going on. And we've been seeing other series go on, but we wanted to know what has happened since that time. Are these characters, where are these characters, what are they doing? And of course the adventure never stops, Julian, because we don't want this adventure to stop. We've been enjoying the series and the characters, and of course, we would expect, at least I would expect, to see the torch passed from character to character, something that I think is incredibly important. If we expect, let's say, the this particular IP to continue, there has to be some kind of torch passed, if you will. And when I say torch passed, I mean, let's say from I guess captain to captain, or from however they want to do it. There has to feel like there's some kind of transition, and it feels organic, it feels natural in this universe. So um you and I were talking about this. I didn't read this entire article, but I did send it to you. And I don't even know if you have seen it yet, but um from a lot of what we've heard, even on this channel, let's say, this this new season is gearing up to be, let's say, the biggest event in 28 years. And gee, Julian, there's been a lot going on in Star Trek for the past 28 years, but this kind of feels like it could be, even though we have gotten good Star Trek in that time period. Obviously Voyager, D Space Nine, there's been a lot of wonderful programming. Is this season gearing up to be the biggest event in 28 years, Julian?
Well, certainly, I think for that, yes, they have been hyping this quite a lot, especially after they showed the trailer. Um, from what, of course, Rob has been able to tell us, I think that we are in for a real treat, and that's exciting. And for Next Generation fans, I think this really is going to be a treat for them, and that from what Rob says, it sounds like the writing rings true, that the characters play through true, and that it's going to feel authentic. It's going to feel like authentic. You're watching authentic Next Generation Trek, um, with along with what other things that they've tried to establish, have things that have happened in because they're going to have to, of course, include some of those things that we've been told have happened within that Picard universe from the first two seasons. And of course they show that we're going to see Seven of Nine, and we're going to see Raffi. As far as passing on to another, I think that would be an awful lot of extra weight to carry through. And of course, we don't know exactly what the whole storyline is going to be on this, but I think it sounds like it's going to be pretty heavy. They're going to be in the thick of it, and I don't know if they're really going to have time to be able to establish some sort of group of younger officers that are going to be able to carry on. You don't want to just throw these together and say, okay, these are the new people, not even knowing if there's a chemistry, not even knowing if there's an interest from the fan base to want to, see that sometimes. So I would feel better if they just tell the story that they want to tell, and not worry about what's going to happen in the future, and leave that up to other writers to come up with innovative ways to introduce new characters and start new storylines from there.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And, I think you make a good point about that, because, it is kind of being promoted heavily. And I'm not going to say they're making promises, but it does feel it's indicating, let's say, innuendo that there are some promises about this being, one of the best seasons ever. Maybe, something we've all been waiting for. It seems to me like they're promising that. I want it to be everything I've been waiting for. And I definitely want that. I want it to be a good series. I don't want it to be bad. And so we are seeing and are obviously going to see the rest of the crew, Jordy and Worf. I'm very excited about seeing them, along with everyone else. But I think here it says, for here they're also talking about lore is in it, and I know that at the end through the trailer we saw that. But this is going to be, we haven't really even had a movie, let's say, that has grabbed our attention, let's say, the way we would like it to. And the notion of having so many episodes, Julian, that, and I know people have said, well, some of the Star Trek movies were just like the TV show or one episode, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we enjoyed them anyway. This really could be phenomenal in a sense, and really kind of reinvigorating the series. Do you think? Do you think that's what's going to happen? Do you think people are going to kind of look at this and say, "Wow, I really feel like this is, bringing things together where we were kind of lost. We were kind of lost. We didn't know, things were unfinished. We didn't get, a continuation of the story. It's not easy to pick up after so many years. Can they do this? Will it work?"
Well, that's kind of a tough one because in a reality, the Next Generation show itself, after 7 years, had quite a fitting send off with the end of their seasons, and they kind of closed that out, and then went into the movies, and I think that from that point of view, that's how people feel unsatisfied, is because the movies started out strong and then kind of went downhill. By the time of Nemesis, a lot of people were not happy with that being the last Next Generation movie. It felt very incomplete, I guess. So I think from the point of view of this, what everybody wants is they want to see the crew back together, being able to do, to behave in ways that their characters would behave, telling a story that feels authentic to Star Trek and Next Generation, and that's all I can ask for. I After this long, I don't need another Next Generation series to go on for years. I think if they tell the story that they're trying to tell completely, and by the end of however many episodes it's going to be, that we feel satisfied, then that's all I can ask for right there, is to be happy with the story that's told. If it ends there, then it ends there. I think Rob's been very, very happy about what he's seen, and I think in a way, him. This is rare. I think that somebody's like, yeah, I saw what it looked like. I saw it, and it's great. And I think that is part of. I think somebody said, you know what, he likes it. We're going to start hyping this. Let's let him talk about it. They probably said, hey, you can say how much you like, just don't give away the plot. But it kind of chimes in with the hype that we are starting to see. That started hitting all the the fanzine sites and everything as soon as those trailers came out, and so to have a person who loves Trek come out and say this is damn good Trek, that's the best stuff, that the best advertisement you could get, I think. So I'll just be happy with a good season of Picard, with characters behaving in the way that makes sense to those of us who love that series.
I will too, Julian. I'm so looking forward to Picard season 3. I think it's going to be something that we've been waiting for a long time. And, this is going to be such an incredible year. I'm so just elated that, as you said, Julian, I trust Robert. So, I think that upon his recommendation and his taste level for the IP, there couldn't be a better judge for this, as far as I'm concerned. So, what are your thoughts about 2022? Your last thoughts on 2022 and 2023 coming ahead, Julian? What are your last thoughts?
Regarding Trek, for 2022, we've seen a lot of Trek stuff come out, and that's just great for anybody who wants to indulge in Trek, whether it's animated or live action. We had 2 animated series. We had 3 live action series. Um, they keep on talking about trying to create more series, but I have my doubts about some of those. I don't know if we're really going to see like a Section 31 show. I don't know if it's actually needed. I really don't. And I don't think that that's going to happen. But that doesn't make me sad. We have another season of Strange New Worlds. We have another season of Picard. We have another season of Discovery for those who love Discovery. We have Lower Decks and Prodigy. I think that Trek World is looking good for the foreseeable future. At least going into 2023. Where it goes from there, I don't know. But I'm looking forward to indulging my favorite passion, watching Trek.
And I feel the same way, Julian. I think that 2022 was kind of a learning experience, and a developmental stage in this IP that they had to take, whether they liked it or not. But 2023 does feel very promising. I'm excited to see this new Picard. I'm excited to see what they're going to do with Strange New Worlds. I've been excited in this way that I haven't been for a while for Star Trek. So I think that speaks volumes to say something like that, that we're actually looking forward to something. I know some of you out there who have been enjoying all the series, we're very happy for you as well. But of course, Julian and I are speaking for ourselves here. I am very excited for Strange New Worlds and for Picard season 3. So I think that 2023 is going to be an even better year. There's a lot to look forward to, and it's going to be fantastic, Julian. But Julian, I did want to thank you for joining me today on this first episode of PGS Treks. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. Julian, you and I are going to continue to review the Picard series here on the Burnett Network. Julian, where can people find you?
Well, mostly they can find me on Facebook. That's where I am. I don't Twitter or TikTok or anything like that. So if you want to shoot me something, find me. I'm often commenting in the PGS Facebook page and my own page, and that's where you can find me if you want to shoot me a line.
Wonderful. And guys, you can always find me here on the Burnett Network, either on PGS Treks here, or on Midnight Musings with Robert, and even on Ladies of the PGS on Monday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern. But you can also find me on my YouTube channel, Positive Fandom, as well, where I do review science fiction, fantasy, horror, everything under the sun, guys, and my Sunday brunch show. So on behalf of everybody here, I want to thank Tom Jr. Jackson, who's moderator in the chat. I can't remember if there's other moderators here. I thought I saw Lord Toth. But thank you, moderators, so much, Tom Jr. Jackson. We are all goof people, Tom. Thank you for your help and support. And for everybody who is in the chat, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your feelings. This is what the PGS community is about. I'm so thrilled to be here. And I hope you all are doing well in this holiday season. And always remember, no matter where you are in the galaxy, to please be kind. Take care, everybody.
Live long and prosper. Thank you, RM.